You had a really great guest a few months ago in the industrial business named John McManus from Cushman.
Yeah.
I
He's beast
listened to
in the
that
space.
one. I watched him. He is fantastic.
Yeah.
What are you brokering now? What are you doing?
So I don't, I'm a broker, but I haven't really ever focused on the broker side of the business. So my background has been single family, fix and flip, that sort of thing. And then I got into multifamily space. We did some development deals. And so now it's really focused on multifamily. And I like the development of contractor garages.
If you're a real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show is for you. Learn secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field who will guide you on your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so you can take your commissions and turn them into cash flow. Here's your host, Randal. Let's dive in.
All right, we've got a great show for you today. Joel Friedland is joining me, and we are going to discuss syndication and brokerage and how his business evolved from the 80s, 90s up to today and what he's working on in the industrial space. Guy is a wealth of knowledge. So Joel and I talk about his brokerage business, how they built it over time, how he worked for a family office and how that influenced his investment decisions, some of the struggles he had and life lessons that he has learned through his investing cycle. So I know you're going to get a ton out of the show. Please go on, rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. Give us a one-word response in the review. That helps us a ton. Bring on experts just like Joel. So let's jump into the episode. Let's go. All right. Well, let's jump in first. Let's just cover. So, right, a lot of listeners, real estate agents going out, they're doing their active job, they're working, and they are doing their thing. You have done the broker side of the business, and you are also in the investing side of the business. So, I kind of want to touch on how you got started actually investing, and if you could just give us a brief background of, you got started in the real estate game, and then transitioning into either investing or how that worked out.
Sure. I graduated from the University of Michigan back in 1981, and I was looking for a job, and a friend introduced me to a family named Podolsky that I had never met before. And I went and interviewed with them for a job. They owned 6 million square feet of industrial property in Chicago, which is where I lived and live. And the Podolskis had 84 buildings. In 1981, interest rates were through the roof. It sounds crazy to even say it, but 17% on loans. And business was just stuck. The companies weren't moving. They were scared to death. And the Podolskis had 10 vacancies, and they hired me as an agent. Said, fill up our 10 vacant buildings out of our 84 buildings. And I went cold calling door to door in industrial parks as a broker. I wasn't licensed in the beginning. I actually studied for the licensing in Illinois, and I was unlicensed and pretty worried about it because it took about 6 months to sign up and get the license at that time. And by the time the 6 months were up, I had already made about 25 deals. Tiny little deals like
Yeah.
3,000, 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet. By knocking on doors, I found just all kinds of brokerage opportunities. I was out there every day. I was nonstop. And they started to trust that I could do the business, and they gave me bigger and bigger assignments. And I became, over a 10-year period, almost like a member of the family with them. And I wanted so badly to understand, how do you buy properties if you have no money? Because as a broker, I started with nothing. And over the first few years, I made enough money that I could buy a car and I could get an apartment. And I couldn't afford to live the lifestyle of a millionaire, but I lived the top of the lifestyle that I could without saving any money. And even when I started making a six-figure income when I was in my middle 20s, I spent it. It's the way people did things. In my world, people were spenders. And nobody told me, you need to save money. You should put money away. So in my ninth year as a broker, I wanted to start buying properties because I saw that the Podolskis had made all their wealth by owning, not by brokering. Management business, but that's a loser of a business in almost every case. Not always, but usually. So I decided I'm going to go buy a building, and I was just frustrated. I didn't know how to do it. So I went to Milt and Steve Podolsky, the father and son that I worked for, and I said, I want to buy a building. And they said, great, we'll put up a third of the money if you go raise the rest of it. Find a deal. So I found my first deal. It was $560,000, 14,000 square foot building. And it was in an industrial park in a town called Gurnee, Illinois. And the Podolskis were true to their word. They put up a third. They introduced me to their investors from their $500 million portfolio. And I went and met with some of their investors, and I convinced them that this was a good deal and to put 20,000 in each. And I put 20,000 in, which was about as much as I could afford to do. I had a couple of kids later on, but at that time, well, I had 3 kids later on, but at that time I had no big expenses. We lived in an apartment. We had 1 child, not the others. And I stretched. I went on credit cards. I literally went on credit cards. I was carrying credit cards at 24% interest. And I raised the money from a group of my people, 1/3, the Podolskis 1/3, and friends of theirs and investors of theirs 1/3. And
All
we
cash, all
all
equity.
cash,
Yeah.
no mortgage,
Yeah.
which is, by the way, how I do deals today.
I definitely want to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
We'll dig in that rabbit hole in a second. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No problem. So, we leased the building, and I said, hey, this was fun. I learned how to do it. So I went out and did another deal that was $2.5 million. And the Podolskis also put a third of that up. And I also went out and talked to the same investors that were their people who put in about a third. And I raised about a third. So now I had 2 deals under my belt in 2 years. And I just went to the races. I still brokered. We had a brokerage company that we started in 1991. I left the Podolsky firm, but stayed very close friends with them. But we built a brokerage firm up to 26 agents, all doing industrial. We started managing other people's properties, and we were buying somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 properties a year, the same way we did the first 2. Raised money, bought the properties, many flips, many long-term holds. And by the time we were done with all that, before 2008, we had done about 90 deals. We had bought 90 properties. Total value, probably 200 million. Total.
Did you exit all of those?
We have 19 right now.
Okay.
Of which 7 are newer than that. And we exited all but those other 12.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
A bunch of questions here, right? I want to go back. Okay. So the Podolsky family, I assume they had a family office, essentially is what you were going to work for. So because not everybody goes directly and that's their first gig, right? Working for a family office has bunch of money and ready to put it to work, and you are in there kind of bird dogging for them essentially. So how did that shape your investing either thesis or your philosophy? Because I think that was that's your entry point into real estate. So
yeah, well, Milt Podolsky was an expert. He had done 84 deals when I met him, and they were all syndicated, and they were all local. They had 1 property in Florida, so they could write off their trips to Florida. But from Chicago in the snow, you fly to Florida. That's what snowbirds do.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah. So Milt was amazing. He was larger than life. Big guy, lots of opinions, very successful, started with nothing. And he said to me, let me tell you how to avoid mistakes. And he gave me a list, just a list. And the first thing on the list was never justify a bad deal by making the numbers work so that your numbers on paper work, but maybe the deal won't. Look at the deal realistically and then do realistic numbers. And if they don't work, you can't do the deal. He had this one friend named Al. He said, Al was such a genius. He was such a great real estate guy. I respected him so much, but he got a little desperate to do deals and he wasn't doing enough. And it's always hard to buy. Buying's always tough. Prices are always high. And Al did this, what he called the backwards analysis, which is he justified a deal that didn't really work by making the numbers look better than they actually were. He said, Al just screwed up, man. Don't do that. Don't be like Al.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, one of my first mentors when I first got started, he was lending me some money, some private money, and his philosophy was always have money in the deal. It was something like that. Don't get over your skis, essentially. Just his conservative approach. And he had, I don't know, at any given time, 40 million on the street just working. He was lending money on, and he built it up over time. So yeah, and another guy.
No, Milt was not conservative. He was every bit of a gambler. He
really, yeah.
Oh yeah. In his later years, after his wife died, he was really down and depressed, and he needed something to do. So he built a $200 million office complex from nothing and put 80% debt on it. I mean, at a time when things weren't working out for office at that moment, he was a big shooter. He was not conservative. I'm conservative because I saw him lose money on deals. I saw other people lose money on deals, and I have lost money on deals. And boy, that just gives you a lot of religion very fast when you have a bunch of deals that are in trouble.
Yeah, I would think so. So again, back to your philosophy on not taking on debt, and you said that's how you are still operating. Was that from the outset? It sounds like the very first deal you did, no debt. So do you ever put debt on deals?
I have a story. It's a cautionary tale.
Fire away.
My first two deals were no debt because I saw the risks that Milt was taking, and I didn't have it in my gut to lose money by putting lots of leverage on. I saw that the leverage in his 10 bad deals, a few of them really crashed. And I said, I don't want my deals to crash, so I'm not going to do debt. And then I brought on a young guy as a broker in 1991. And his name was Dave, 6'5". I'm 5'8". We'd stand next to each other. It was kind of funny, the tall guy and the little guy. And we became really close. We brokered deals together, and I taught him how to be a buyer and a syndicator with me. And in our third deal, he convinced me to borrow some money. And we made a fortune. We made a lot, because when you buy $1 million building with 150 down and you borrow 85%. If you make $300,000 net on your equity, you're talking about a 200% return in a month. Well, that worked.
Yeah.
Because it was the year that worked. So we did it again and again. And every time we did it, 70% debt, 80% debt. And I was too stupid to realize that the first deals that I did were the conservative ones, and I should have stayed that way instead of becoming a gambler with my partner, Dave. We did dozens of deals with debt, and then everything was great. We were making 25% IRRs and 30% IRRs and 26% IRR and 19%. Our list of deals looked like they look today before things went bad with interest rates over the past year and a half.
Yep.
There was nothing we could do wrong. It wasn't that we were smart. It's that we were lucky. It was the right timing. So it was like this. We went no debt, lots of debt, and then 2008 hit. And I spent the next many years working through trouble because we had a bunch of deals with a lot of debt. And I was just like Milt. I had 10 vacancies out of 50 buildings. Industrial's a little riskier. You get a higher return than multifamily, but there's a price you pay, and that's risk. And if you do single tenant buildings and they go vacant, you better not owe the bank a lot of money. And we did. So we crashed and burned on about 9 deals. We had 50 remaining. And between 2008 and 2015, I was struggling to keep them alive. What's going on right now, as we talk, while a lot of multi guys are not giving properties back to banks or declaring bankruptcy, it's because it's like when you catch a fish, the fish doesn't say, okay, I'm in the boat. It fights. So every owner that's in trouble in a deal or in multiple deals is fighting for another day, not to be pulled into the boat, which is essentially, the analogy for losing your
Foreclosure.
property or
Yeah.
losing all your money. So they fight and they fight and they make deals with the bank and they go on a forbearance agreement to extend the terms. And the banks want to help you because they don't want the property back. So that's what happened. I was fighting like a fish being pulled in by the banks to try to keep everything alive. And it doesn't happen in 1 year. This is the year where people are realizing, I better go get preferred equity or dilute my investors or do rescue money. Most of that rescue money, if things don't get better, if they get worse, is good money after bad.
Yep.
Been there, done that. So now I woke up after 2008 and struggling for years, doing virtually no deals, just doing brokerage to stay solvent. As a broker for many, many years, I can make a very big living doing brokerage with my good clients. But I stepped back in to do deals again in 2019, and I swore I would not borrow more than 30% ever again. And that 3 out of every 4 deals I do are going to be debt-free. Because I'm 64 and my investors are between the ages of 45, let's say, and 90. And all they want to do is make a good return and not lose money. They want yield, they want cash flow. And when I tell them I do all cash deals with no debt, it interests about 1 out of every 5 people. They said, well, other people say, well, real estate's a leverage business. Are you nuts? You can't make great returns. My answer is, you know what? I believe that there are 4,000 syndicators in the United States who have $50 million or more under management. I'm just one of 4,000. And I'm the only one who does all cash deals. So you can talk to 3,999 other people if you think that having debt is good for you.
Yeah.
By the way, you can be in 20 deals with them and 3 deals with me. I'm not disqualified. You can go do deals with debt. I'm not against debt. I just won't do it.
Yeah. No, it definitely niches you down very quickly self-eliminates potential limited partners coming into your deals, which is fantastic. I'm curious.
But it's hard because you have to raise 4 times as much money.
Yeah. Okay. So how have you seen from your arc of investing, how have you seen the difference in your syndicated deal terms from when you had your first deals? It sounded like maybe it was JV style, third, maybe something like that. I don't know if you syndicated that.
I was the manager.
You were, okay.
That's the other thing. Milt taught me one other thing. If you don't control your deal, you're going to get into a lawsuit with your partners. Always. When something goes bad, when there's a pie and there's enough pie there for everybody to eat, you get along. But every rock group breaks up except the Rolling Stones. They all break up. So every partnership in real estate breaks up. It's no different. Egos, resentments, someone marries a bitch,
all the things.
I mean, honestly,
all the things.
That's what happens. The wife says, you're not getting enough. You got to ask for more. Push it. The wife. Or, they're desperate for money because you've had bad deals and now you're fighting over the scraps.
Yeah.
So Milt said, don't give anybody mutual control. You have to have one person in charge. There's only one president in the United States. If there were 2, nothing would get done. You've already got Congress and the president blocking each other. If there were co-presidents, nothing would get done.
Yeah, no, for sure. 100% agree with that. So when you structure those deals, you're the manager of the entity. Yeah. And obviously you have the controlling. So in the early deals, same question applies. In the early days, you were managing this entity that owned, I guess, an SPE that owned the asset, correct?
Yes.
So what were the deal terms with those initial partners? And then how have they changed over time with your growth and experience and, changing economic cycles?
Well, in those days, cap rates were 10%. So it was a preferred return of 10% cumulatively with an 80-20 split after the investors are trued up or made whole to get their 10%. So there was no tiered approach where after 20% it would turn into 30 or 50 later on for a home run deal.
Yeah.
Then we started getting so successful and making so much money with our flips or our short-term ownership deals that we said, look, the investors are making a fortune. Why don't we start taking a 50% split after 15? So we would do, and then as cap rates came down, so did preferred return. So we went from that 10% preferred to a 9 to an 8. And then we're at 8% preferred and with a 80-20 split, and then 50% after 15.
Yeah. Do you still do that model, or is that changed again?
It depends on the deal. We do a lot of deals in the city of Chicago. Chicago is a great industrial market where all the trucks and rail cars have to pass through between the East and the West. And it's a giant market. It's one of the top 3 industrial markets, 1.5 billion square feet, 16,000 buildings. So it's an incredibly great market. One of the most important elements of structuring a deal is having an exit strategy that works. And our exit strategy is always selling to users. We don't sell to investors. We have single tenant buildings. When our tenant leaves, we sell to users, like the next door neighbor who manufactures products and can't afford to move. So over the years, we've changed the way we explain our deals to our investors. And if it's a home run, like runway, we think like in the city of Chicago, you buy a property in an area that's in the path of development. And we think we bought a $3 million property that based on what's happened in the area is going to be worth $6 million in 7 years. We're going to take better splits because we found an amazing opportunity. We have one of those right now.
Yeah.
But in the suburbs, we do a different deal. We don't get as big of a split because in the suburbs, industrial buildings only go up an average of 3% a year. They're not like the city where crazy things happen. Every city deal we've done, the value of the buildings have gone up by double or triple over a 10-year period. Every deal we've done in the suburbs, except for the last 4 years, because industrial's on fire, they generally have gone up 30% over a 10-year period. You can't take a rich promote or carried interest on a deal that's just okay.
Yeah.
Safe, stable, steady, but we just bought 3 buildings in the city on the river. Chicago River is a great feature. And we have a tenant there called Tampico. They make fruit juice concentrate. They've been there since 1991. And we bought the building from the original founding family back in October. And it's 83,000 feet and 3 buildings. And it's 5 acres of land. And the land cost that we're in for is $59 a square foot. And I have comps down the street for residential redevelopment at $130 a square foot.
I was going to say, that sounds very inexpensive.
Yeah, so we look at it like we're going to probably double everybody's money if this thing does what city deals do in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe triple their money. There's a little debt on that. We have 30% debt. And so when we explain it to our investors, it's, yeah, we're taking better splits for us on this one, but you go find a deal like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring you into my other deals that are just good. They're not great. They're not amazing. And we'll do 80-20. But if you want to be in this deal, we worked on it for 2.5 years. We discovered it off market. We're taking a lot of risk.
Yeah. No, there's a huge argument, obviously. If that's the other thing, you can weed yourself out as an LP real fast if you think that the sponsor should not be taking a promote or getting paid. It takes a lot of work. A lot of work.
Yeah. I have 3 or 4 people that I've talked to out of my group that have said, I'm not going into this deal because your carried interest is too rich. And that's fine, because I've got 70 people who are interested because, you know who invested in it? The people who flew in from out of town to meet me for lunch and go to a Cub game and look at the property because it's right near Wrigley Field, right?
Yeah.
So those people, they came to see it. One guy came in who's a really old friend of mine. He was going to put $100,000 in, came in, flew in, came right to the buildings from the airport. We walked around inside the buildings. and saw what they invested in machinery and equipment and tanks, mixing tanks for fruit juice. And he walked out of there and he said, I'm not in for 100. I said, what's going on? He says, I'm in for 400.
Yeah.
400,000. I said, oh, okay. And other people who came to see it, there were $50,000 investors are in for 200,000. All you have to do is go see what this is and look at the river and how the condos across the river look. Just, if we get the zoning change in the future, it's like the best grand slam we've ever seen. I'm not going to do it for a 20% split.
Yeah. I love the architecture tour right there on the river. I did that a number of years ago. I had maybe 2 hours on the ground in Chicago before I was going overseas, and jumped off, took the train straight in, did the whole architecture tour. So I don't know where that is on the river, but
it's in one of the greatest neighborhoods on the north side. It's
really?
Like this little enclave of $1 million homes all around us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I want to talk. So I love talking about structuring deals, right? We're just kind of talking about that, how you're working on that right now. But and I've done series on syndications and on funds, and I've had fund managers on, and I've had syndicators on, right? So let's pull on the thread, I guess, about current deal flow and what you guys are seeing and how you're looking into this coming year. Because if you're still structuring your deals like that, you're still finding deals like that. Are you hyper focused still in the Chicago downtown area? Are you looking outward? Like, what are you guys seeing and doing?
So the Chicago area is a huge area. It's not like LA or like the tri-state area in New York, but it's a huge area where the lake is on the east side. You can't go any farther east than the lake or you're going to get wet. But you can go out west, and you can go up north, and you can go down south. And the ring, as you go farther out, that's where properties can be built new and where there's no barrier to entry for a developer. We don't want to be there. Let them beat each other's brains in and let them make a lot of money. They're doing great out there. That's great. Let them build all the Amazon warehouses they want. We do little infill deals that are either in the city or very close to the O'Hare Airport. We measure it in minutes to the airport.
Okay.
We bought a building that's 2 minutes from the airport. We think it's the second closest building to O'Hare anywhere in the Chicago area. We also there's a place here called the Fulton Market, which is just booming. We bought a few buildings there a number of years ago. They've tripled or quadrupled in value because the market there has changed. It's become like the hot office and restaurant and hotel area. And we love city buildings like that. We want to be in where there's a lot of velocity, many, many users, not easy, but easier to get employees who live in the neighborhoods, especially people who are willing to work for 15 or 20 bucks an hour, which is what our kind of tenants want. So we're very specific. We did deals in Ohio, Florida, New York. I don't want to get in an airplane and compete in someone else's market that they're going to eat my lunch. We know our market. We know what to pay. So we have about 5 deals that we bought just in the last 2.5 years. And it's slow. It's a slow go. Right now, we only have 1 on the docket. We're looking at deals every day, but it's very hard to find 20 and 30,000 square foot buildings for sale. The for sale market in our area, O'Hare, Chicago City, buildings in our size, Class B buildings, 0 vacancy rate. 0. There's nothing. So we have to knock on doors and find off market stuff.
Are you doing any development or redevelopment?
So I have lost so much money on development and redevelopment that I was just doing a chart of all of our deals over the past few days. Yeah. And it was painful because our losses are dramatic. In every case, it's where we didn't stick with our niche.
Yeah.
It's buying buildings out of town, doing development, and doing redevelopment. Sam Zell, whose in-house attorney was my neighbor whose lawn I cut as a kid. They taught us, his lawyer and Sam Zell indirectly taught us, if you develop, you're in the development business. It's like being in the manufacturing business. You're making something that requires a different level of risk and a different level of experience and expertise. We only buy buildings now because all my losses have 2 things in common. either development or redevelopment, or not in my market niche with the laser focus in Chicago.
Yeah. So did you start buying outside of Chicago in the last 5 years? Or was
No,
it well
I haven't
before
bought
that?
anything outside of Chicago since 2007.
Okay. Prior to GFC. Okay. Yeah. Because I've noticed lately, and I just interviewed another guy 5 minutes ago, and same thing. Hey, we started buying out, Sunbelt looked great, and he's up in Baltimore. But I've noticed a lot of people turning back into local, hyper local investing. So I just didn't know if it
Yeah.
was based on the times now, because a lot of people get burned out from jumping on a plane, flying somewhere, looking at a property, not having boots on the ground, that sort of thing. So anyway, I just
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
curious
Yeah.
about that.
We can't manage or asset manage a building really as effectively unless it's a half-hour drive or less from our
Yeah.
office.
And the majority of your deals, they're not, you say you don't do redevelopment, but have you tried like this one that's on the river, Tempico, right? Is
No, 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 no,
that's
no,
not going
no.
to be an entitlement play where you guys are trying to get it
No,
rezoned or something?
no, absolutely not. I have sold many properties as a broker and as an owner to development groups.
Yeah.
Redevelopment from one use to another is a very complex business that involves politics, zoning
Yeah.
boards,
That's why I just didn't know if you were doing it.
trustees,
Yeah.
city councils, contractors, architects, engineers. It's a disaster. If you look at my list of deals, it's a disaster area for every time I've ever attempted to do a major development. It's not in me. I'm a people person. I'm not an engineer.
Yeah.
So what happened? I made a giant engineering mistake on a deal that cost us $1.25 million because I didn't know and nobody told me and nobody thought of it. I didn't bring in the right people and I didn't ask the right questions. I don't belong in that business.
Yeah.
Our successes have all been buying existing buildings.
Yeah. I'll second that. I mean, so on some of the deals that I've looked at and development deals that we've worked on and gone through the entitlement process, if you don't have an owner rep or somebody like that, or you haven't had the opportunity to work for a family office who does that, and that's what they do, and you get that benefit of the experience. Yeah. Don't just try to do it unless you're going to pay the school of hard knocks, I guess, the money it takes to learn. And it's going to be a couple 100,000 at least, I would think. Yeah, it's tough. I want to, before we get off onto something else, I want to talk about Epic Savage. I mean, I'm going back and I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, okay, how did the name come about? And this was early days, right? When you first got started and you were doing the brokerage side of the business. Just tell me the name. Like, how did that even come about? And what were you guys thinking?
So when I left the Podolskis, which was very hard to do because I love them and still do, I got together with three guys to start our new business: brokerage, management, and acquisition, and unfortunately development. One of the fellows was a guy named Lou Savage. He was a longtime industrial broker that had been with one of the larger firms for a while. And he left the larger firm and started his own brokerage company. And his kids are Hollywood TV stars. So as he and I got to be friendly with each other and decided to be partners, his son Fred had a TV show that was going on called The Wonder Years, and
Yeah. I was like, I
his
know
son,
this. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, and his son Ben had a show just getting started called Boy Meets World.
Mhm.
And by the way, he's running for Congress. If you're in California, vote for Ben Savage. That's what his mother told me to say.
There you go.
So the key thing with Lou Savage was he knew everybody, but he had to leave town because Joanne said, if you don't come live with the family in LA, because that's where we are now most of the time, and you're in Chicago being Joel's partner, you can marry Joel. So Lou was with me for a very short period of time, but we named the company. Epic were the initials of my grandparents, EP, I, and C.
All right.
And Lou Savage was his name. And I said, I don't want to use my name. I don't want it to be Friedland and Savage. I want it to be Epic and Savage. He said, Epic and Savage? He said, how about Epic Savage? So that's how we named it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I saw it and it immediately stuck out and stuck with me. So awesome story on how that got going. So
And we sold that business. We sold it to Transwestern in 2014.
yeah, I saw that. So we can talk about the exit and what that looked like, but I want to tie in agents again. And so when you were building up the brokerage side of the business, were you actively encouraging agents to go out and be investors in deals that you guys were seeing? And how does that work? Because I kind of want to get to some advice you might have for real estate agents and professionals who are either not investing or somehow they can step up and get to the next level. So
Yeah, almost all of our brokers who made any money at all invested with us.
yep.
And our deals were typically, let's say, $2 million or $3 million. And at that time we were putting debt on, so maybe $1 million of equity. So a young broker could put 25,000 if he had the money or she had the money and own 2.5% of a deal. So I had a number of the really smart brokers investing with us, and it was not hard to get them to do it. They knew the properties and they saw how much money we were making as owners. So, but it was a requirement for me to give them the opportunity. I couldn't say, hey, we're going to exclude you. In fact, I said, you're our first people. You're the ones who find our deals off market by knocking on doors. So I gave them all the opportunity to invest. And over the years, about 7 or 8 of them did.
Yeah.
I think it was 8.
Was there any trouble on the brokerage side, right? So you're repping sellers, and did you ever have any issues? And I think I asked McManus the same thing because they were
Yeah.
doing the, you know,
Yeah. John said yes, and I'll say yes.
yeah.
If you're an owner in your town, the other brokers, when they're negative selling, will drop. They don't have to say anything bad about you. That, oh, he owns buildings down the street from you. I don't know if that's a conflict of interest.
Little like slide it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you guys combat that? Because I know there's a lot of people that I talk to, same position, right? They have brokerage or they're an agent and they want to go buy and they want to do something. So how do you guys
Well,
handle that?
my partner Dave, the young guy that wanted to put all the debt on it, his idea was, let's start a separate company and put it in a different building, and let's have the people in that business office there and the broker's office elsewhere. We called our company Cook Financial.
Okay.
And that name came from, we were sitting with our in-house lawyer and trying to figure out a name. And he says, come on, you guys, we've got to cook up a name. We said, okay, that's it.
I nailed it. Let's
Cook up a
go.
name. So it became Cook Financial. And we put it in the office building in Rosemont next to our other building where we had Epic Savage. So you could walk back and forth between the buildings through a link, one of those glass links.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So Cook Financial was on Bryn Mawr and had a Bryn Mawr Avenue address, and Epic Savage had a River Road address because it was on a corner. And we didn't fool anybody. Everybody knew, oh, that's Dave and Joel.
Yeah. But I imagine, I'll ask, but I imagine later when you went to exit the brokerage side of the business, was that not a smart move looking backward?
It was great to keep Cook Financial separate from the brokerage business. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you guys get to the point where you wanted to sell? I guess just walk me through that process of selling a brokerage.
Well, we had brought in 11 partners. We had 11 brokers who became partners with us. As we grew as a small company, not being Cushman and not being CBRE, the way to keep people is to give them a better deal and give them a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So there were 12 of us, and I wasn't running it anymore. We had a guy running it who, with the CFO, came to us and said, guys, we will do better if we merge in with a national firm. So we did an experiment and became licensees and partners with Newmark for 5 years.
Okay.
And they tried to buy us, but their price was about $1.5 million lower than Transwestern. So John decided that let's go with the bigger number. And so they chose Transwestern, and they bought us.
Okay. And so does that, I mean, it's kind of like a private equity play almost at that point where you have to stay on after the fact. Everybody cashes out, but you're still working for them.
5-year earnout for all of the partners to get their amount of dollars that was going to be the ultimate total amount.
Yeah. So did you stay on till 2019?
No. No, a bunch of us left. It wasn't working out the way that some of the people wanted it to, and there was an exodus out the door to various places, including Cushman and Wakefield,
Yeah.
and some local firms and CBRE and different. It didn't work the way everybody had hoped. And I don't know if you know this, but many of my investors and friends have sold their businesses to private equity groups over the years. Almost none of them can stay. Most of them get fired or quit.
Yeah.
Like, you're not running my company right. It's not your company.
Yeah.
Used to be your company. And now you're working for someone where you're used to being in charge. It's not easy to do.
Yeah, I've heard good and bad. I'll say that. Some of my friends who are dentists, they have had good experiences, but they're relatively new and early in the process. And some others who have exited have just ended up leaving, right? It's the same thing. So if you don't vest, if you guys didn't do the 5 year, then is it out? Like, what were the terms of that?
Everybody was different. I have a lot of stories about that for myself and for others. Everybody was different. Some people left because they were willing to not get the full amount that they would have gotten if they stayed. Some people left because they just didn't get along with someone at the new company. Everybody had different reasons if they left, and a bunch stayed. There's still a bunch there.
Yeah. Again, I'm just curious because this is new to me hearing this sort of transaction. So they're buying your book of business, essentially, buying clientele and buying the brokers who are staying on and the agents who are staying on. And so if they leave, and is it cash and equity sort of deal? And the equity is going to vest, you're not going to get it for the 5 years. So then what?
No, the equity's minimal. It's really,
Okay.
it's the cash. Let's say, just use a round number, a young partner who's been with the firm for 5 years might have gotten $500,000 of the total amount that the buying firm was paying in total, and it would vest at 100,000 a year.
I
So
got it. Okay.
they actually sometimes, in I think our case, it's hard for me to remember this because it was 2014, but oftentimes the whole amount is paid in cash, and then if you leave, you have to pay it back. You have to pay
Oh,
back
wow.
the
Okay.
at a share. It's like in a lease. It's like a cancellation penalty.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You have to
Yeah.
pay you have to pay to get out. There's
Yeah.
no
That's
real easy off ramp that's not expensive.
feels like a lockup, like you're really tied in that way. And I could see how that could get.
Golden handcuffs.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how most buyout firms keep their founders, to
Yeah.
make sure that they don't blow it by having the founder not on their team.
Yeah. I want to know some of the trends that you're seeing right now. We can wrap it up with, again, you guys are moving, you're doing the 20 to 30,000 square feet, you're buying in the Chicago market. How has, COVID, not just COVID, but the increase in e-commerce and that sort of thing, how has it shaped what you guys are looking at, what you guys are buying? Or is it?
Well, it's increased the price of buildings because distribution has gone nuts, and every retailer has to have a warehouse for their online business, and Amazon and other online business. The whole world has changed so much that every store that closes means that a warehouse opens. And every time somebody comes up with an idea as to how to sell something on the internet, somebody needs a warehouse or an assembly operation.
Hmm.
So values have gone up about 70% since 2019 on properties. If you had a property that was worth $2 million, now it's worth $3.5 million. And rents have gone up commensurately with that. And that's one of the reasons that the values have gone up, because if you sell it on a cap rate with the increased rents, we have a tenant that's now paying $6 net per square foot, and the negotiated rent is over $9 now with the renewal. So it's harder to buy deals because buildings are more expensive, because across the industrial market, it's been just so incredibly active. Industrial brokers in the past 4 years have gotten wealthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a few guys doing that. It's been good for them. I want to wrap it up with, what is your best piece of advice for a syndicator, an investor, somebody either looking to get started or an LP? Like, I know it's a broad question. So what's your best piece of advice?
I have one piece. I only have one piece of advice, and
Fire
I
away.
get myself. You must have incredibly smart, experienced advisors, and you have to listen to them. I have an advisory board of 8 people, which is led by 2 of them, and they are so tough on asking questions about due diligence items, the credit of the tenant. Are we looking at the financials, the civil engineering, the roof, the HVAC inspection, the lease itself, making sure that the lease is written right. The clauses are not accidentally not in our favor as a landlord. A lot of lawyers don't know how to do this, and they write the leases, and it turns out that there's negative things in leases that if you don't find them, you find them after you buy it. So I've got Steve Podolsky, my original mentor, is one of my number 1 advisors. I have another fellow who just invests in a lot of real estate and has other businesses and has great judgment. And I've got 6 other people who just don't give me any slack. It's like, here are the tough questions. Let's answer them. And then what we do is we have a Zoom call with 8 or 12 or 14 people, depending on which other investors want to listen in. And we have this like slugfest. It's like they're punching my face. What about this? What about that? What about that? And I want that, because if you do that after you buy it, you're screwed. It's too late.
Too late. Yeah.
So it's get great advisors who know your business. I have about 6 syndicators who occasionally call me because they think that I'm that guy for them. And I guess I have become that for them.
Yeah.
I'll spend a half hour with them once a month if they need me, because it's like paying it forward.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those advisors to some people.
Yeah. It's like your own investment committee. That's that's great. Awesome advice, Joel Friedland on the mic, man. I really appreciate you jumping on and sharing your knowledge.
The new mic.
And that's right. That's right. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you again sharing your knowledge and jumping on with us. If somebody wants to reach out, if somebody wants to invest with you, I'm going to share all your contact information in the show notes so they can catch up with you however you want them to catch up with you in the Chicago area. So yeah, again,
Sure.
Good luck in 2024, 25.
Thank you. You too. BritProperties.com, BRIT with 1 T, properties.com. Very interesting discussion, Randall. Thank you. I've learned, it's funny when you have a discussion with someone, sometimes you learn things just because someone made you think about something I haven't thought about that buyout with Transwestern in years. Yeah.
I've seen it. So here's where that comes from. Just because when we're building up our business, and I was always wondering what is sellable in this model, right? What can we actually do as a business to sell these things? And so, yeah, I'm always curious when somebody exits, what that looked like, how you guys structured it, and especially on the brokerage side of it. So again, thanks for sharing the information.
Randall, thank you.
All the best. Catch up with you soon.
Okay, great.
Bye.
Did you know that 80% of the agents we speak with got into real estate in order to gain passive income so they could obtain financial freedom and become work optional? If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. We'll catch you on the next episode.